Right, so I kind of started off doing some stuff. This is us, by the way. So what do I think? So we need some schema changes for categorization, a method for assigning transfers to a category, migration script for converting the old schema to the new schema, and an API definition for settlement on demand, which we don't need to do anything about yet, but because they're going to be wanting to change the portals in Mawali, I kind of promised Pierre we would get that out as quickly as we possibly could. So that, I think, is, that's PI1, which is a fortnight, isn't it? Then PI2, I thought we'd write a category rule. I mean, i.e. a rule to assign transfers to categories based on the content of the transfer. And revise the aggregation process to include categorization. And when we've done that, I think categorization will be complete. So that makes sense, Joe?
No, she's there.
Sorry, yeah, because you unmuted me and then I muted myself and I didn't realise that I then couldn't unmute myself again.
Well, that's your punishment. I'm going to mute you again. You're going to have to sit here and listen.
And there's no chat or anything for me to ask you to unmute me.
No, sorry, it's all a bit more authoritarian at the moment.
It is indeed. Yes, that looks good to me.
Okay, so then
just to be sorry, because I've not been in one of these before. So that's when it says it's starting like on the 27th. Is that really expecting this to be started on the 27th? By whom?
By Kim, I think, who is the master of all things agile as regards the PI.
But which team would be with? So the team that we're currently working with would be starting work on this, we're saying?
I don't think we're saying anything quite as radical as that. We are saying that...
A mythical team.
Yes, a mythical team who will be doing Mythical Man months.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I just wanted to check that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think there are any assumptions yet about who will actually be working on it.
Okay.
So we will we'll burn that bridge when we come to it.
Okie doke.
Actually, wouldn't do that. Oh, here we go. Right, so now we move on to settlement on demand. So I think we need a script to extract transactions by category.
Mm-hmm.
We've done the Swagger definition. So then, okay, so we need a script to extract transactions by category, and then we need a I'm going to say so something that automatically creates a settlement window and assign contents. Then we need to oh, that's interesting. What happened there? Don't know. What? What's that?
It's Friday.
Yeah, it is. Oh, here we are. I want to bin this. Hey. So now I want to yeah. And And then I think...
So Michael, quick question.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Is it your expectation that when you talk about creating this script to extract transactions by category, will this have any sort of cross relationship to, say, for example, the split payment conversation?
No. So this is all about, what happens at the moment, Neil, is that when a transfer is completed and the funds are released, then each transfer is assigned to a settlement window. And at the moment, there's just a single active settlement window, and every transfer is assigned to the active settlement window. And you can close a settlement window and open a new one whenever you want to. I mean, the administrators can. And that's the way that works. So typically they will say, we will have a settlement window for each day, and all of the transfers for that day will go into that settlement window. Now, what we're going to want to do with settlement on demand is have a thing that says, I want to pick a collection of transfers, whatever settlement window they're currently in, that share a particular characteristic. And in particular for Mawali, who Joe is representing on this call, that will include something that says ones that were quoted with a given exchange rate. Right? So what Joe would then like to be able to do is to pull all of the transfers with that category out of whatever settlement windows they're currently in and put them all into a new settlement window and settle that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just trying to tie this back to our very early conversations with regards to Genero, right? And so yes. Genero would effectively be a category in this case.
No.
No?
So in this case, Genero would be a participant.
Okay.
Sorry, I should explain this to Joe.
But it is a sorry, go ahead.
No. So what we might want to do, for instance, is we might want to say, I would like to categorize all transfers that are Genero-based transfers. Right? And then I would like to settle all of the Genero-based transfers for yesterday, let's say. So what this
Genero is a DFSP?
Yes. So what we've been talking to Neil about, Neil represents, among other things, he has many strings to his bow, but they are looking at a product called Genero. And this essentially is a digital currency, I think I'm right in saying.
Right.
And the idea is they would like to have, let's say in Tanzania, a cross-network provider, which will be a gateway onto the Genero network. So the idea is that you should be able, if you can attach to the Genero network from anywhere in the world, you should be able to send funds to anywhere in Tanzania, and indeed vice versa. Okay. So what we're saying here is that if that were the case, now it might not, so for instance, if a DFSP in Tanzania were to act as a Genero gateway, then some of its transfers would be ordinary TIPS transfers and some of them would be Genero transfers. So what we're talking about here, for instance, is the possibility that you could separate the Genero transfers and say they are going to be settled in a different way.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Why are we producing bills? Is that
well, whatever we produce? What do we produce as part of a settlement? What do you call them?
The settlement file, payment files.
There you go.
Cool.
So I'm going to stop calling this categorization. Okay.
Do you foresee any other filters that would need to be, today you say by category. Do you think that this week is going to be done by another sort of filter type later on?
Yeah. Well, sorry. So when I say category, the other part of this, the first part of this leading up to categorization complete, is going to be, that's going to be a facility which allows any scheme to define its own categories and to categorize, well, I'll rephrase that, to categorize transfers using those categories.
And that's what the rule is, isn't it? Right, category rule?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what will happen is that there will be a custom rule in the system which interrogates each transfer as it completes and says, what category do you belong to, based on some content of the transfer, and that will be configurable by each scheme in its own way. So we'll have a bucket, if you like, called category, and that bucket can be filled by any scheme in any way that it wants to. But we will aggregate all the transfers by category, so that means that schemes will be able to categorize their transfers in whatever way they want, and to see, for instance, net settlement values based on those categories. So that's what all of that means. So we've now done that bit. And that just leaves us whatever else we were going to do. A couple of other things, weren't there?
And remind me, how are we going to ensure that all the transfers in the original window were settled?
I'm glad you asked me that, because I have a rabbit in this hat. And the answer is that when we pull transfers out of the settlement window to, according to our categories, we will still have the possibility of settling in the old way for all the transfers that are still there.
Okay.
So you just need to hit the button, as you do now, that says, please settle the settlement window, and it magically settles everything that hasn't already been settled. Ta-ta. So we're going to do that, and there was one other thing that we were going to do. Sorry, I've lost track of it.
Michael, I was just thinking, Pierre speaking.
Hi, Pierre.
Hey, guys.
Welcome. Sorry, I missed you because I was...
Yeah, I was late. That's why you missed me. You didn't miss anything. I was just arrived late. Do you think we should also look at the impact on the reporting requirements? Will they follow? Will the API follow so that we can, request all the transactions that have been settled or that have been assigned this?
That's an interesting question, because at the moment, of course, the reporting doesn't include category. So you are absolutely right, Pierre, as usual.
Well, unless when I'm, except when I'm wrong.
Yeah, but that's so rare that we don't need to consider it. It's a real edge case.
I wish you were right on this one.
So I am going to... And I'm probably going to put something in here. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Sorry. And I'm going to call that.
Have your Pierre, have your reports been donated now? Are they OSS reports?
Sorry, Joe, we're speaking
Have
to me.
your reports now, OSS reports, have they been donated because, or are they still
Yes,
online?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be the OSS ones that would be amended to include categories under this stream.
Yep. Oh, we run out of time. We have, haven't we?
Run out of time? Oh,
Sorry, I mean in the PIs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick this one in there. Oh, shit, I wish it wouldn't do that. No, don't do that. Sorry.
That's the thing, Michael. Won't you want to play with new tools at every convening? You know, just
No, absolutely. I think this
latest
actually
fun
this is
stuff out
the
there.
tool we played with at the last convening. I couldn't make it work then either. Go on, ask me how much time I spent working on it and practicing before this convening. Right. Okay, so that'll do us. And now we will take that. I've got to tell you, my life has been made so much easier since Control D arrived. Shut up. I mean, the ability to just duplicate things all the time is just fantastic, I think. Okay, so I think that's kind of it.
Love it. Completeness complete.
Yeah, that's what we're aiming for. Well, I mean, yeah, so okay, I'll call it Settlement V2.
And so to do the very first piece, the very first category piece, are we dependent on any enhancements to the rules engine?
No.
No?
I mean, the rules engine, as we currently have it for tips, will do this.
Excellent.
Because it's in the same place as our existing tips rule. We just have to change the content of the rule.
Okay, cool.
So that's all fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some documentation, because we all like documentation, especially if we don't have to write it. Oh, sorry. And there we are. Pierre, is there anything else that I've missed that you would like to see? Sorry, do you want me to go back a bit?
Have to be sure, yeah.
Let me go back and I'll just work through it from the beginning.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, so, no, it's all right, don't apologize. So we start with schema changes for categorization.
Yeah.
And a migration script to convert an existing database to a categorized database.
Mm-hmm.
Then we do the category alignment method, i.e. the action that's fired if the rule evaluates true, i.e. something to just put a category into the category table.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the API definition for settlement on demand, which is what you wanted so that you could get on with the portal side of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sprint 1. Sprint 2 is write the category rule itself, i.e. pick the information up from the transfer and fire the category assignment method. And then we need to revise the aggregation process to include categorization. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then at that point, categorization is complete. So we leave a bit of space here just for smart demonstrations and general buggeration. Now we get on to settlement on demand. So we need a script to extract transactions by category. Code to create a new settlement window and assign these contents to it. And then code to create a settlement itself and produce the payment files. And then settlement on demand is complete.
And your definition of payment file here is?
It's whatever the API gives you back when you say, I'd like to do a settlement, please.
Yeah, I think whatever artifact output.
Yes, so it's the thing that would be input to your payment files that you would send to Citibank or whatever that might be.
All right. So the payment information really.
Payment
Yes.
matrix. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh well, yeah, matrix sounds very good. I'll put matrix. I like that. Okay. So now we go on a bit further, and
Quick, Michael, before we move off of that matrix point, would that also include any sort of error handling and error output?
well, there shouldn't be any error output at that point. So the transfers are irrevocable, and we are settling them. I mean, yes. So, I mean, my answer is if anything were to go wrong with the process, obviously we would need to report back. But it shouldn't do because, as I say, all the transfers are irrevocable at this point, and all we're doing is picking which ones we're going to settle. Now, it might be that we would produce a bill for a particular participant, and they would say, I don't recognize this stuff at all. Prove it to me. And then we would have to go back and say, well, here are all the transfers that go to make up that bill. Right. So you might have an argument at that point.
Maybe it's a downstream reconciliation, but it's not necessarily inherent to this output.
No, that's right. Okay, so
okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
At this point, just realizing that we still perform settlement per currency, right? Completely separately, in a way. It can be done together, but the way it's calculated, the payment matrix is going to be only between DFSPs or VDFSPs of the same currency, right?
Well, it will be for transfers which have the same rate ID. Now, by definition, those will be transfers of the same currency, I think. Or am I wrong?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, sorry, we will also still have the currency in there, so you will be able to say, pull out all of the transfers for that rate ID whose currency is Moroccan dinars.
Right. Get that. I was just wondering what the payment matrix look like. If you say I want to settle all the transfers with this rate ID, right? So if we're talking about if we're just looking at the France Morocco, for instance, to have two currencies, you're going to get a bunch of transfers in euro and a bunch of transfers in dirham in there, right?
Yep.
But
and they will all have the same rate ID.
Rate ID. Yes, exactly.
Yep. Cool. Yep.
And then when you generate the payment matrix, you will only show the payments from essentially a DFSP who works in euro and the VDFSP euro, and from the VDFSP dirham to DFSPs that work in dirhams, right? Assuming that it's a one-way thing.
Yes, that's right. So you will see those in separate. So they will be in the same payment matrix, but in different.
Yeah, there will be two.
Because it's per participant.
Yeah, the
And
matrix will be partially diagonalized, right?
Exactly.
As the math guys would say. Okay, so I get that, but then you leave all the work about the forex orders all the correspondence between. Yeah, all the forex work is done separately, completely out of that, right?
Yes, so that'll be done via TMF, I assume.
Yeah. Okay. And there's no information, but Jo is here, so she probably knows better. No information the TMF might need at this point from the additional information that it might need from the API. The TMF, a TMF in the broad sense.
So when we were looking to do TMF, we did have the way we envisaged receiving the data was split by DFSP and by exchange rate. So, but we would want the credits and debits separate, not netted, so that then we could handle whichever settlement method was required.
I think aggregation comes out like that already. Let me just, oh God, it's disappeared. I don't know why it is. I've got a picture of the database schema, which I have around the place all the time. And for some reason, my machine keeps getting rid of it. So if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'll just get it up again and just check.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we're missing something here.
Okay,
TMF
what do you think?
Is going to be stuck.
What does TMF need to know?
Let me think.
Sorry.
Because it's... Or maybe not.
As long as it has the credit total and the debit total for each DFSP separately, it should be able to calculate.
Yeah, it does. Again, I'll check this, but here it comes. Yeah. That's more like it.
As long as it has that, it should be able to do any calculation it needs to either work out the forex total or net things or gross settle or net settle or any settle.
Okay, so the aggregation has, it's got participant, account type, currency, the transfer participant role type, so it's broken out by creditor party and debitor party, ledger entry type and amount, and we will obviously be adding category. So you will see things broken down like that. So for instance, you will be able to see a separate line for the sum of transfers where the participant was a creditor and the sum of transfers where the participant was a debtor.
Okay, and you can also add I think what you need is, let me think, bloody hell, that's complicated. You probably need also what I would call a settlement code or something like that. That tells you which approach should be used for physical settlement by the TMF after that, right? Because in some cases, the payment will go to an actual forex provider. So the payment transfer would be to an actual forex provider. In some cases, the payment transfer could be directly addressed to the receiver. Of course, it's processed by a bank in between, but in terms of payment order, it's going to look like this. So But I guess it's already embedded in what you said, right? You could say,
well, except that I don't think that the OSS modular loop database knows anything about that or should know anything about it. So the way I would envisage this working is the administrators will say, I want to settle, let's say, everything that had this rate ID. So they press the button saying, I want to settle everything with this rate ID.
oh yeah, you're right.
They get a matrix out that says, here are the values. And then it's up to them to say, okay, now I understand.
No, my bad. You're right, Michael. My bad. I heard here. Yeah, that's the way you see. That's the way to do. Yeah, sure.
So
it's all that information I'm requiring is indirectly linked to the rate ID anyway. So once you get the rate ID, you know what you need to do with it. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Okay. So just on the end of it, then we've got aligning the ledgers so that they also show net settlement as well as gross settlement. Some sort of default portal, documentation, and aligning the reporting with the categorization. Actually, I'm going to change that so it says something like, I'm going to try and change it. Support categorization and reporting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We happy with that?
Yeah, I think so. It's it doesn't look too complicated, and yet it provides a lot of flexibility. So sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's my favorite combination too. Okay. So do we need to do anything more?
How to be sure?
I don't think we do, and I can't think of anything that we've forgotten, but that's probably because I'm just not seeing it.
I can't think of anything else.
Okay, Neil, is this making sense to you?
It does. Once again, just trying to get an understanding what the interplay would be with the other work streams, if there are any. But you said it's sort of self-contained, right?
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So, confidence vote?
10?
10? You're only allowed 5.
There you go.
You're that confident. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yes, maybe one thing, Michael.
Oh, yeah. What?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Are we sure that we will be able to deploy this into production somewhere without breaking everything on a live system?
Well, that goes back to, ta-da, that task there.
Yeah, the migration script, I recall that.
Yeah.
I also mentioned that you in your presentation, you said that we're just adding stuff in ledgers, so it shouldn't be a breaking change.
No, I think that's right. No,
yeah,
that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So with an existing database, your migration script will ensure that it keeps working with just new fields that will be emptied at the beginning and that can be filled later, right?
Yes. So it will start empty, and I think you will just be able to. So now one change that we will need to make is that we will be adding a column to the settlement content aggregation table, which is the one that the table that holds the aggregations.
Yeah.
Now that will now have a category column in it to hold the categories as we aggregate them. So we will need to. That will be, yes. On the other hand, that will be a nullable column. So we should just be able to add it without causing a problem and without. So what will happen is that existing ones will just have a category of null.
Yeah. I really intellectually I agree with the principle that we're just adding stuff that can be defaulted to nothing or null or whatever. So it shouldn't impact the rest at all. That said, I would still recommend, maybe it's already somewhere in the sprint or it's for later, but a non-regression test on an old system and just to check out how it works.
Yeah. Okay. You're absolutely right. And I think so. I will put something in here. It's going to be called O'Reilly regression test. Yeah.
Yeah. Or O'Reilly or whatever. Huh? In my case, it's more in
but the fact of the matter is that yours is the only currently running system.
Yeah. Which is an expensive privilege. I'm just
absolutely, but a source of justified pride.
Oh yeah. Okay, and the tools to set new categories, etc. I saw it somewhere.
Sorry, when you say the tools to set new categories?
Yeah, at one point you need the category assignment method
yes, that's here in the category rule. So
okay,
we have a category assignment method.
Yeah, that's category rule. Okay. Yeah.
That'll be a generic method that just accepts a transfer ID and a category. Right? And then we will write the category rule that says, pick up the assignment. Pick up the rate ID and make it the category for this transfer.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just I don't know how this would be done if it's just really if it has to be a script or something, or if there will be at one point an interface to do this a bit more.
No, we'll do it using the rules interface, the one that we already have in tips. Were you there for the rules presentation?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay, it'll be the generic rules engine that would be
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that now from the presentation as well. You'd mentioned it. Okay, good.
Okay, so are we happy?
Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Could you
thank
go
you.
to the end, the last sprint?
Sure.
So when we say default portal, what was that meaning?
Just some simple portal stuff to make sure that we can do all of exercise all of the settlement API via a portal.
Okay. So that would be part of the portal, hopefully the portal that's being talked about in another work stream currently.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent.
But we want to make sure that everything, that we have something that enables you to do everything that the API will do.
Yeah. So that sounds like quite a lot of work in that last sprint, but I don't know what size we're supposed to be worrying about.
Well, documentation, we'll get some kind of documentation oik to do that. Sorry. Some highly trained and motivated professional.
Okay.
So categorization and reporting, I don't think should be too hard, especially if I can spell support correctly. Aligning the ledgers, I think, is not that hard. I mean, it sounds hard, but actually, since we have the continuous gross method of doing it, all we need to do is to extend that insert query so that it covers all of the transfers in a settlement batch instead of just the one transfer.
Okay.
So you're right. I mean, there's a fair amount of stuff to do, but we're going to be so far ahead by then that we'll probably have got that done before we even enter that sprint. Oh, sorry. That's an architect joke. Okay.
Right.
I think Sam has a question on the board.
Sorry. Wow. Somebody's got a question on the board.
I think because he's muted.
Sorry. I can't even see the...
Yeah, sorry, I was unable to unmute myself. But
sorry, Sam. What are you doing here, Sam? You should be doing bulk or something like that.
Yeah, I was hopping around, but curious. If settlement video is complete, I guess we'll be missing it from next PI, Michael, isn't it?
Sorry?
If settlement V2 is complete with this PI, it's a bad situation to repeat a joke, but I was going to say we'll probably be missing it if there is nothing else to do.
We'll send you a postcard from our holidays.
And on a lightly serious note, is the QA implicit and is the objective smart this time?
Yeah, I think settlement V2 is complete. It is a smart objective. At least we should be able to measure it. I.e., we've done everything we said we were going to do, and there's nothing left over for settlement V2. Yeah, I think that's right. No, we've got testing in there. Particularly, we've got a bit further back here a Mawali regression test in there to make sure that we can apply it correctly to Mawali. And as we all know, Sam, our definition of done includes all tests passed, including the golden path test. So it's implicit in the very idea that we've managed to complete these stories that all of the tests have passed. Okay, so confidence voting, chaps. I know Neil is a 10. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm still good. If it's 5, it's 5.
No, 10 is good.
10 is good. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, similar to Joe, I have the same concern that the last sprint seems to be quite heavy. But I think it sounds like you got it under control. But
I would say so. I mean, of course, what will actually happen is we'll spend the last sprint trying to finish off all the other stuff we didn't finish in the previous sprints. But
that goes without saying.
Indeed, which is why I didn't. Okay. So confidence, Pierre.
On the delivery of I can only be very optimistic because we need it. So I don't know. Maybe with a few snacks here and there. Out of 5, 4.
Okay, Joe.
4.
Okay, well, I'm going to vote 10 with Neil. So that's 28 divided by 4. The confidence level 7.
But only, so that's a good way to be over the maximum, right?
Exactly. Our confidence is brimming over.
Until we get to reality and all the things we haven't thought about in detail.
Well, that's the great thing about being an architect, Joe. You never have to worry about reality.
You don't have to worry about detail either.
Exactly. No reality, no detail. It's a perfect profession. Well, for me, at least. Okay. Is there anything over here that we haven't filled in? Risks. Oh, yes. Oh, confidence vote. Can I put 7?
No, just to be clear, because with all of this this joking, I'm not sure about what the scale actually is, Michael.
It's 1 to 5. Yeah.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah. So I think what we're saying is we got we're a strong 4, I would say.
Although I have no, if we're being honest about it, I have no idea of what size team we're talking about is delivering this. So how I can really be confident of anything? If it was one person, then it would be 0. It's, I mean, what we basing it on? A team size of what?
A team size of sufficient.
Well, in that case, it's a 5.
Well, no, actually. I have certainly worked in large teams that you would have thought easily able to perform the tasks as like assigned to them, which have failed to deliver much at all. But there we are. So I'm going to put a... what I'm going to put in here... I'm going to give this a... it's interesting.
We surely want to put a red star.
Yeah, why not?
Sort of like an explosion.
Okay, what colour do you like them, Neil? You can choose.
I just opinionated today.
Nice turquoise, perhaps.
Wonderful. Goes with
Yellow
my shirt.
turquoise. That's interesting. Let's turn the rest of it turquoise too. Hey, there we go. So what I might need to do here is... Wow, this is a really crappy tool. I am profoundly impressed. How's that? What risks then? Anyone got any risks?
That the architect missed something. No.
I was trying to...
I think you meant the product owner missed something, Pierre. Okay, so we're going to put a risk that's going to be called... Doink.
I think definitely not understanding what the interdependencies are. For example, the dependency to have the appropriate framework ready to produce the portal.
Sorry, the appropriate what, Neil?
For example, we talked about the interdependency to build out the portal requires us to have the tech available.
Yes, that's true. But I think we have got that already, haven't we, Joe?
No.
We haven't. Okay.
The plan is to, as Hank's working on, hopefully in the line below here, to create the framework and the portal in this PI.
Okay. In that case...
yeah, I forgot one actually. 1 point, sorry. Not about the confidence, about the contents. Is it too late?
No, not at all.
Okay. You mentioned that there's also some more going on with transactions that could have several transfers, and that,
yes.
that would allow to have a consistent management of the status across the different transfers, right?
Yep.
Does that impact what we're doing here?
I don't think so. So transfers will remain as they currently are. And we do want to be allocating these things by transfer, i.e. by leg, and not by transaction.
Okay.
I think. So what we will need to do is we will need to add something to... No?
We'll need to add something?
We will need to add something in the database to store the transaction that a transfer belongs to.
Yeah.
And we will need to be changing the API so that we, in quotes and transfer requests, we can include multiple hops as components of the transaction. So the idea is the payer DFSP will issue a single request that says, I would like to transfer these funds to the payee DFSP.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to go via the FXP. So the switch should route the transfer, first of all, to the FXP,
Mm-hmm.
which does its stuff, reserves its funds, and then sends it on to the payee DFSP,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
accepts it. And so at this point, we have two entries in the ledger for that transaction. The first transfer from the payer to FXP, and the second one from the FXP to the payee. Now, the payee DFSP says, yes, I accept it. And now the whole transaction is completed. So it goes back to the switch, which sends that message to the FXP, which completes the transaction in its own ledgers, and then sends it back to the payer DFSP, which completes the transaction in its own ledgers. So that's a single pass, and either everything succeeds or everything fails.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So we're absolutely sure that if a transfer is committed on one leg, it's also its friend. If a transaction is committed on one leg,
yes,
it's also committed on the other one.
Yes. Because they will now happen as part of the same process.
Okay. So then, okay. If we do that, we can then, work on settlement separately, I guess.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I would definitely not like to make them codependent.
Yeah. It's just that from the DFSP's perspective, they just look at the overall transaction, really. They say, had this transaction been settled, not this individual transfer, so...
That's right. So...
But they just look at the transfer that they see on their side, and that's probably good enough.
Yeah. So they will just see the transaction.
They will just see the transaction, the whole thing.
Yes.
And it will be marked somewhere as settled.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so then it works. Sorry for the...
No, it's okay. I mean, this is the process we need to go through at this point, which is the process of saying, I wonder what we've forgotten. Did we forget this? And, the more we go through this, the more we say, is that a problem or not? The better, the more resilient our solution is likely to be, because then we will be bringing up things that are saying, should have thought of that before. So, anything else?
Can't think of anything.
Me neither. It's worrying, isn't it?
And last point, but it's just a double check with I guess the API will allow to combine criteria, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you should be able to select, I think. Sorry, I'm just going back to the thing to say, well, if the aggregation file is segmented by participant, account type, currency, role type, i.e. creditor debtor, ledger entry type, and category. You should be able to select any of those.
Okay. Is there any, you mentioned the time, right?
Yes. Sorry, we've got created date as well.
Yeah, created date as well. And settled, not settled.
Well, no, because you can only, so you will only, I think we will have to say, you will only be able to select transfers which belong to windows which have not already been settled.
Okay, makes sense. So that's... Okay, makes sense. Yeah, the settled and unsettled is more a question for reporting, actually. It's more for the reporting API.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Well, if we haven't got anything else, then I think we haven't got anything else.
Just sorry, just
No.
when we need to stop, that's always when you start saying, okay, would dare forget?
Yeah,
Go back to
absolutely.
the
Provocative.
selection again. So would that allow, for instance, to say I want to settle just between this DFSP and this DFSP?
Well, that's a combination of, isn't it? So what that says is no.
Although we can probably fake it if we, by the way, we assign rate IDs, maybe, but
Possibly. I don't think. Well,
yeah,
actually,
I
yes.
don't think it would work. Huh?
In what circumstances would you want to just do DFSPs rather than a rate? Or...
If they have agreed on a special deal or whatever.
Ooh, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that, Pierre.
Yes, but that's just something that can happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, So what does a special deal mean in that context?
I don't know. I'm just trying to. I just see an example where we discussed this morning with a special pair of DFSPs where we don't settle at all, right? Because they've decided to do it elsewhere.
Oh, yes.
So that's an example.
Right.
But they
Is
could be
that
others.
not on the currency channel rather than on the specific DFSPs?
No, it's really on between specific DFSPs in that case, because they do this because they belong to the same group, blah, 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 right? So they wouldn't do it otherwise.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think, no, right. So actually, yes, this is rather interesting because what you want to do here, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is you want to have a bilateral settlement between two DFSPs.
Yes.
So, and that would be per currency or what? Oh no, it's just per DFSP, isn't it?
Yeah, it's per pair of
Per pair of DFSP. Okay, so that's easy. That's easy because.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Carry on. No, I was going to say it's easy.
We could cheat with we put a rate ID that corresponds to this one only, and that's it.
Exactly. Well, you don't even have to put a rate ID. You can just put it as part of the rule. If the payer is, if the payer is this DFSP and the payee is that, or the payer is payee is that. So if the two parties are these two, then put them in a special category.
Oh yeah, of course. You have the rule engine, gives you all the flexibility you need. It's just one specific category. You're right. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
So simple.
Indeed. Your worries are over.
Okay. We're good. I stopped worrying. Michael thought it all up. No problem.
Promise?
Not
Promise?
all through, sorry. Not up.
Yeah. If only that were true.
Hey everyone, I just joined. I actually only came for the donuts.
Oh, hi, Miller.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we were just about to have the donuts, so it's good that you brought them.
I'm having almond biscotti. I'm sorry, that'll have to do.
Ah, of course, I'd forgotten you were in Seattle.
Yes.
So, do you want to go through it? We got a strong 4 on the confidence. Do you want to go through the thing? Hello? Can you hear me, Miller?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that directed to me?
Yeah, sorry. We are just about to finish here. Would you like us to go through?
I don't want to interrupt you guys if you're still working
No,
through stuff. It looked like
we're not.
Neil was trying desperately to get unmuted. Looks like he has been muted somehow. But
let me see if I can unmute him. Yeah,
That's good, thanks. Yeah, nothing special to add. You know, I think we've gone through everything. But sorry, double duty.
Okay. Shall I go briefly through it, Miller?
I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay, so we start sprint 1 with schema changes for categorization and a migration script for converting existing schemes.
And has that been reflected through the zero downtime strategy that is developing in the version work stream, which is looking like a 2-step process where you add the optional field, then you have the ability to do offline history migration, and then you convert over and make it required once the new code is in place. That I think that's the rough outline.
It'll be that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are not going to be non-nullable columns, so in principle it shouldn't be too much. We did sort of talk briefly through what we thought would be required, and I think it's going to be okay. But
Pierre's here, so he's not going to let you do something that disrupts his system. So.
I brought this up before, Miller, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so there's a schema change then to allow for a transaction to be categorized. And I wasn't clear on whether that was a many valued field or is that a single valued field?
Well, sorry, you mean can a transaction have many categories?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, we'll put that in normal form, yes.
Yes. Yes, okay. So there's a one-to-many relationship between transactions and categories.
Okay.
Though we will at this time only be using one. Okay, so we do that. We create a category assignment method, which essentially takes a transfer ID and a category and sticks it in the table. We're expecting this not to be too terribly hard, but there we are. And we do the API definition for settlement on demand so that Pierre and his team of merry men can be, merry people, can be getting on with their portal stuff. Then sprint 2, we write the category rule to pick up information from the transfer and use our category assignment method to stick it in the category table, and we revise the aggregation process to include categorization. And at that point, categorization is complete, and we run the Mawali regression test and spend lots of time writing fabulous presentations for the mid-PI meeting.
Excellent. Yes, my favorite time.
I know, ours too. So now we move on to settlement on demand. We do a script to extract transactions by category, or what have you. So we were talking through with Pierre what sorts of things you should be able to select on. We have something which creates some code which creates a settlement window and assigns its contents by the transfers that were extracted by category. Then in the next sprint, we create the settlement and produce the payment matrix for the settlement. And at that point, settlement on demand is complete.
And do you have the ability to map that settlement matrix to the net settlement instruction in XML format or whatever other goo the bank wants? Is that on the roadmap here, or
that's
is that something Moali does for themselves?
That's something Moali does for themselves. So that's one of the things that's on the other side of the settlement API. So we produce the thing that says, for this settlement, these are the amounts owed.
It's a bit east of Eden, that one is. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we did say every scheme is going to want to do this in different ways, and it turns out Moali is even going to want to do it in different ways for different kinds of things.
And hence the category.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Okay. So that's
and
all
so
fine.
Settlement V2 complete. I love your objectives. They're crisp, easy to talk to. And Pierre, did you think that this work stream was...
Sorry.
Yeah. No, so Pierre, do you think that this work adequately reflects the priorities that Moali would have,
yes,
independent of resourcing? Okay. That's great.
Okay, so final sprint of the PI. Align the ledgers for net settlement with gross settlement, i.e. apply our gross settlement method to net settlements as well, so you see all the ledger movements. Construct a default portal so that we can exercise all of the features of the API. Support categorization and reporting. Well spotted, Pierre. So we will certainly want to be able to do that too. And write some fabulous documentation. And at that point, we think our work here is done.
Are you anticipating that the category would be also available in a gross settlement system?
Yeah, it would be available in anything.
Okay.
Because particularly if you're going to be able to do it in reporting, then you see, you might very well want to be able to see. Yeah. Okay. Show me all the transfers that were done with brown-eyed centers.
Indeed. Okay. That's pretty cool. I like it.
Okay, we took a vote. Strong 4. Oh, 2 risks, unknown unknowns, and portal framework not ready.
Yes, the unknown unknowns. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Rumsfeld.
Exactly. Who knew that he would have stumbled on such an important concept?
Right. Portal framework not ready. You mean the operational portal?
Yeah, I mean the default
stuff Hank is
framework.
Working on.
Exactly.
Okay. I did drop in on their session, and there are, just for clarity here around the thinking through that risk item, there are several things that need to be done because it is now a lightweight micro front end strategy that's being adopted. That means everything's driven through APIs. And we talked through the original policy doc that I wrote that explained how I thought policy might apply to all of this stuff and what's a role and what's a user and all this stuff. So then bringing those two things together, what changes do they need to make to the operational API, the hub API, that then support the idea that you have these lightweight configurable panes of glass that allow you to see the system and watch it, observe it, and control it? And how does that work through the access control lists, including what we were calling in that document the synthetic role, which is the 2 authenticated users sitting in different roles can come together to create a token that is usable to access functionality that no single user in a single role could have otherwise performed.
It's a beautiful thing.
So Miller, quick question then. Would those APIs be expressed in sort of framework agnostic, a framework agnostic approach? For example, if I'm using Vue or Angular or whatever, these APIs wouldn't have that sort of tendency.
What it would be is it would be the API surface area expressed in YAML and exposed as a HTTP endpoint, for example, or a gRPC endpoint that can be activated to provide you with a flow of data from the system for purposes of observation and rendering, and can also allow you to express control against the system through endpoints. So again, it's a web-based structure. The difference is that instead of there being a web server that is sitting inside the hub boundaries and dead glass on the outside, it now has an active glass on the outside and an API, and there is no web server.
Okay.
So it simplifies the way in which you control the system. It also means that I can add a new API at any time. It doesn't break the server. I don't have a big monolithic server I have to go and regress every time I add some tweak to it. And the serverless strategy is gaining a lot of adoption. I mean, if you look at the very simple form of it, it's like Jekyll is used on GitHub, where you can express very simple textual things and they turn into web pages. But that's all done offline. And so you can essentially use a content delivery network to make the operational screens available. And it's cached. Everything's cached and at the edge. And it wouldn't matter where you are that you consume them, because all of the actions that are taken and all of the data that is displayed is being performed in the front end and not through a web server. So that's the strategy they're adopting. That says that the API itself has to change form slightly, and it's all OAuth 2 at that point. So these tokens I was talking about, for example, in a synthetic role, that's just a different token. Instead of giving you the role token I would have given you from my login token, I give you this other token that we went together. Two of us got together and took our keys out and turned them at the same time in the operational console, and it rendered a token that we can now use in the system in an API call that would not have otherwise been possible. And it's good for one use. It's good. You have a minute to submit it, or it times out. Once you've submitted it, you have an hour to use it until it times out. Those kinds of things are all figured out independently, and then you can use those in an expression of policy in form that they have yet to figure out. Like how do I go and say this role has access to these things on the console, but not those things? And Henk has some ideas about that already. And it's not. He's saying, for example, you're not graying out buttons and saying you can't click that button. It's like you don't even see the button because it's not appropriate for you to know that function's even available, let alone that you can't use it. So they have complete flexibility with this strategy then. It's what's presented to an individual role identified user of the system. And that, by the way, could be a mechanical role. That it's like the observational screen in the op center. Has a user role so that's the strategy they're forming. And from the purposes of settlement, there's going to be, as there is now, a button that says, would you please perform a settlement right now? And ways of configuring the automatic settlement rules that will all have to be expressed through the portal, which I think you've already called out as a risk. But there's two parts to it. There's the API side, and then there's the reflection in a standardized front end as to what that looks like. There's a knock-on effect from that, though, Pierre, to you guys, that while this is a simpler strategy, it's probably not the one you're using right now in your op center. So there has to be some explanation about what does migration look like for that. It's probably side-by-siding would be my guess. You do what you do now until you move to the preferred form, which is the simpler form and easier to maintain with all those benefits, but that the other one works fine until you turn it off. So I would say that there really are two risks here, Michael. The one risk is the portal framework itself is not ready, that's true. But there's also there's no way to activate the functions that we need. Or we require something in the portal to do that it wouldn't know to do unless we told it to do that. So you have a dependency back and forth.
Oops.
No, it also sounds like what you stated was that the information that flows through the API will have an interdependency on the rules that dictate what is shown, not shown, etc. So that when the endpoint is called to show a particular button, for example, will depend on a set of global rules for the process to also be available.
That's roughly true. The way that the micro front ends work is that there are literally, if you'd say the combinations of buttons that can be shown, let me just say it that way, was, say, there were 700 different combinations, there will literally be 700 individually compiled screens sitting in the content server. And so your web browser will use an URL link and it will be delivered pre-compiled content instantly, quarter millisecond, delivered from a content server, and it will display it, whatever it's told to display. So all those choices about applying a policy to construct the front end screens is all done offline, take as long as you want. And once they're done, they're done. And so the front end can't do anything else. Now, if you're a hacker, the first thing you're going to do is say, I'm going to pay no attention to the front end I was given. I'm going to just bang on the API and see what I can get away with. So there is actually, of course, active access policy that has to be applied at the token level, the UAuth token level. But that's not actively driving the front end screens, because those were driven through compiled offline compilation processes. I know it sounds weird, but you can actually even build live commerce and quote systems on this plan, bizarrely, where you don't have a web server. You have individual active APIs that are integrated through a pre-compiled front end. That's something that Hank is working through now. So what tools they want to use for that in the platforms. There's some choices that are really good, but they turn out to be proprietary enterprise tools for the backend stuff. And then there are others that are open source that are reasonably complete, but are missing some things. So they're going to go through that. There's sadly, it's not like, well, here are the 3 you can choose from. Which one would you like to use? It turns out there's over 100 of these platform tools. So there's a bit of work to do in figuring out which one will actually meet the requirements.
So no weekends for you then.
Yeah, that's right. But Neil, I'd encourage you to engage with Hank briefly on this micro front end thing to see what he has in mind and make sure that there's a trajectory for converging understanding here.
Most definitely will do it. Thanks.
Well, given it is now 10 to the hour, I'm going to jump to the next. I like what you've done. I like what you've got settled up here. Is there, I didn't notice anything in the workstream here that, other than aligning ledgers for net settlement with gross settlement, are there other technical debt related to settlement that needed doing before we hit the end of phase?
I think the only things that are outstanding, there are a couple of things still in development and testing from the previous PI, one of which is checking the calculation for liquidity cover. Mm-hmm. The SQL is done for that. That's just being Kinexified and tested. And there's another one, but I can't remember what it is. Hold on a moment.
Well, it was one of my favorite teeth grinding exercises, which was that we're still using the persistence layer to do calculations, which I continue to get grumpy about. That settlement calculations are an application function, and that deferring to the database to do these calculations for you is giving up control over something that would be very hard to fix if it goes wrong. So one of those in particular is the rounding strategy. Exactly when in the formula is rounding applied, and can we please not use binary math? Can we use decimal math? So either there is a plugin for MySQL that allows decimal math and we use string fields to maintain those things. That's a fairly significant change, and someone has to look at it. Or what, I guess, would be the point. And for those that say, well, we're not doing any real multiplications, it doesn't matter, I would argue that you can simply take 0.1, subtract 0.3 from it, and then add 0.1 back, add it back in again, and you will not get the number you started with. Adding and subtracting is sufficient to activate that problem. Node makes it a little easier for us because you can plug in the big num and big number library, and I think we now have a wrapper around that. We call the Moduloop math or something like that, or ML math. I don't remember exactly what they called it, but it's just a wrapper so that we don't take dependencies on that external library that we would then have to manage later. We can manage them in one place.
So, can you spare a couple of moments, Miller, to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we have an articulated strategy for how we're going to do this? I mean, I know that a bunch of people in the OSS world have been working on that, but I haven't really been close to it at all. So, what is the preferred method for doing these calculations?
So let me just say it this way. May I share screen briefly?
Yes, of course.
Someone will have to allow that. I
Yeah,
think oh, there we go.
No, that's me, yeah.
All right. Hang on. So try that. This is the problem that we're trying to get around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, and you get around it by agreeing on what your rounding strategy is and where you're going to do it.
Yeah.
But that's not enough, because these two things here I just subtracted, they are rounded. So the result clearly isn't acceptable. Mm-hmm. So, I would need to round that myself. And how exactly am I doing that? And what effect does that have on future calculations and summations? There has to be a canonical strategy for doing that, so that everything is done the same way and we get the same answer every time. This is especially important for Mawali, as I understand it, because as we say, the rounding of the individual, summing the rounded individuals is not the same thing as rounding the sum of the individuals. These things are not the same.
Yeah, but that concerns more the TMF than the switch, if my understanding is correct. The switch is going to do only additions on things that have a finite number of decimals anyway. So
no, but if you look at the screen, you'll see this is the problem. I've decided my currency only has one digit. I've subtracted them and look at the result I got. That's what node's going to get you.
Yeah, then all you have to do is round to the number of digits that is used for this currency, right? Or
now, if I add
with a bit of margin, with a few more digits, if you want to have a bit.
No, it turns out not to be the case. That the problem is fundamentally you can't do math in binary. So you can decide to do imprecise math to whatever level of precision you'd like, but if you don't do it in exactly the same order every time and everybody agrees, you'll get different answers in the final digit, and that's what we have to be careful about.
But my point is that you don't need the final digit. You don't.
No, you don't.
You're way too far in precision here. That's the problem.
Well, we need to support the 18 digits of precision that the system itself requires, and so any solution we come up with has to be accurate to that level. And so the solution itself, though, is unfortunately dependent on the exact expression. So I did one with two terms. I could easily create a third term, or worse, I could say I need to sum everything, all million transactions done by a particular participant. And the way in which I do those, I have to round every intermediate result, and then I have to round the intermediate result of summation. Yeah. Well, I can't, because the rounding that's done by MySQL isn't necessarily compatible with the rounding that's done by the node engine. So what I've said is stop doing it with the database. This is an application function. And if we do it in node, we don't have to use binary at all. We can actually use actual decimal floating point, or decimal fixed point, where they're exact computations using the big number library.
Which is what we have in the database.
You don't. A big number is not available in the database.
No, I understand big number is not, but we have decimal. We are using decimal values, which should give you correct precision arithmetic, if I understand it correctly.
It will sort of do that. It doesn't, though, because it's implemented in binary. It's not actually implemented in decimal. It's a decimal value that's stored with a fixed point. The question is, how is it calculated? And it depends on the database system you use, because SQL is silent on this subject. So does MySQL do it? And does the MySQL that we're using do it? SQL allows you to do whatever you want, basically. Anyway, this is my point, is that if they don't do it the way you want them to do it, your choice is to go modify the database system, that's complicated and probably not a great idea. Or if you had done your calculations in Node, you simply change your code. So hence my diatribe on trying to do calculations in the persistence layer rather than extracting the rows and simply summing them in Node. You got to look at all the rows anyway. Difference does it make?
Wow. So
Would this be enforced through a global rule on Node so that it's consistent across whatever region or territory?
Man, you would love that to be true, but the Node platform itself doesn't implement big number natively. You have to use a library for it, which means that any arithmetic calculation that is done within the system that has an application impact would have to be done through we'll call it the Mojaloop math module. So you would say, I will call mlmath.add to do this calculation, and the result will be properly rounded and properly computed because it will have been done in decimal. And it's very high speed. The implementation of big number is the same guy, Kalashaw, who wrote Rex for IBM back in the day, and have made that a feature of Rex, has been working on that ever since, and it's actually an IEEE standard, I believe, as part of the floating point working group. So it's not like a random thing. It's just a choice that needs to be made at the platform level, and Node didn't make it. So we would need to make it ourselves. Anyway, so it's a thing.
So if I understood your objection to doing the database correctly, Miller, it's not that MySQL doesn't do it. It's just that you can't rely on databases doing it.
You can't even rely on MySQL doing it.
No, it says it's an exact value data type. Is that not?
It is an exact value data type. And if I subtract the two, as I just did here in front of you, I use binary math to do it. So do this in SQL.
Okay.
And depends on the SQL that you use, you may find that you do get an exact calculation result from exact values.
And there's no way you can ask it to round it to no more than 4 decimal digits, right?
But even if you did, you have to do it after every single term.
Yeah.
And every single factor. So somebody has to put those very long expressions into the database to do those things correctly. And if it's an aggregation, like sum, for instance, you don't have that opportunity. So you have to hope that they did it right, where you said, I would like you to sum this set of decimal fields with dot 4 decimal points. Yeah. Please, did you really round them independently in between each one of these cycles, or did you not? And then you rounded it when you were done. If they didn't do it the way you like them to do it, regardless of what that is, then you have no choice because the database only does it that way.
Okay, you can't parameter it. Okay, get it.
You see my point? So to Michael's point, I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. I'm saying that you might find a way to make it work with MySQL. You'll find Postgres doesn't necessarily do it the same way, and certainly SQLite doesn't. But that if you were pulling each row into the application layer and doing your own calculations, then for settlement, then it's completely under your control. And we have access to decimal arithmetic.
Yeah, sure. Then you do what you want, yeah.
Yeah. As Warren points out, it's not an emergency if it's working correctly now, but it is something that is technical debt, in my opinion, that you should figure out. So some progress ought to be made on characterizing this at least, and certainly to Pierre's point that it is at least operating correctly now. I would point out that as Moali expands its business, you will find that you need different levels of rounding for different markets, as you probably already figured out, right? And that it may become more difficult to express that in the SQL.
Yeah, but I think we could probably, as long as we stick to sums, we could stick to a, we put 6 or 7 digits and we're good if we were able to ask the database to do it the way we want, and that would cover all use cases. Really can't think of any other one of any case where it wouldn't work. It gets a lot more tricky, a lot trickier when you start multiplying, but that's in the application layer with the FXP, so it's a different thing.
So yeah, I mean, from a criticality point of view, I think it's a critical design choice that does not have an attached immediate defect. That is that if there is a way to ensure you get the right results given the current choices that have been made, then we're okay. But I don't want to lose this thread because it feels awkward, especially if anyway, yeah.
Okay, I've noted it as a risk.
And Warren is aware of my grumblings on the subject as well. So.
Well, I think, I mean, he is, I know. And I'm sort of aware, but it's always good to be reminded.
The point is that you need to add billions and millions of transactions, billions or millions of billions of transactions to have a problem. So
no, you don't. Actually, it doesn't take that many. 1 million is enough.
1 million is enough?
Oh, yeah. There's only 16 digits here to the right.
Oh, okay, all right. So, but but anyway, guys who are beginning don't have this problem yet, obviously. So that's why it's difficult.
That was really my uber point here was that it doesn't rise to the level of an emergency.
Yeah.
But it is a, in my opinion, poor design choice for separation of concerns. Mm-hmm. The storage layer is to store stuff, and the application layer is where we do calculations. And it is an enterprise pattern to use SQL in this way. The reason SQL has these features is so that a white-suited, be-tied individual can show up at a terminal and make ad hoc queries against a table and get answers, not so much that we think it's a good pattern for application design, although Oracle would try to tell us it was. Anyway, I've wasted enough of your time on this. I just wanted to make sure that that was somewhere on the evaluation roadmap. What would it take to do this? What implications are there to doing the settlement calculation, the matrix development in the apps layer rather than in the SQL layer?
Well, one of the things that we did as part of the tips work that we were doing is instead of calculating all the aggregations at the time a settlement was requested, we calculate them when a settlement window is closed, which means that it's essentially an offline calculation. Doesn't matter how long it takes, basically. And it doesn't slow up the production, for instance, of settlement information.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Sorry. So it used to be the case that all of the aggregations were done at the time a settlement was requested.
Yes.
We changed that round, and we do the aggregation for a settlement window at the time the settlement window is closed. So settlement window is closed, and it goes off to a separate procedure, which might even be of course, an event source sort of thing.
A processing state of some kind, right?
Yes, that's right. Pedro made me say that. It said, this window, somehow in the background, sort yourself out. So that would
you can't add to. So the state of the window is I can't add to a new transactions to it, and I can't actually settle it yet because it isn't ready for that.
Yep.
So it goes through this very defined non-zero time state.
Yep.
Which is working itself out, which means take your time. Whatever it takes is what it takes. And then when it's done with that, then you can settle it.
Yep.
I see.
Now, of course, the settlement on demand would require the aggregations to be done ad hoc. But
it's just it's collapsing two things, though, isn't it? It's saying I'm going to now point at a window and close it. And it's going to immediately go into this processing state, and then I'm going to queue the settlement action against it, which can't start until it's done doing whatever it's doing as an on-demand process.
Yeah.
Or are you saying I'm going to make
So what I'm saying is that a settlement on demand, I look at my settlement window and I say, okay, well, actually, I don't even look at my settlement window. I say, I want to look at all the transfers that, for instance, have this rate ID associated with them, and the system goes away and says, okay, let me pull the information that meets those characteristics from wherever I find it and assign it to a new settlement window, which I then need to aggregate separately in order to get my information that I need for the matrix, for the payment matrix.
So you're pulling things out of active windows, maybe more than one.
No, they're not active windows. So they've got to be closed windows.
But if they're closed, they're already tracking towards settlement on their own.
But that's the whole point. And so being able to pull things out of these windows sorry, being able to pull things out of closed windows and say, I want to turn these things into my own settlement, means that all the transfers you haven't pulled are still in their old windows. So you can do a settle all unsettled by just doing what you would have done before.
Right, but you just made a point that, well, you could do that today because we don't calculate the settlement matrix until you push the settle me button on the window. Now you're saying it actually is going to be done for you in the background from the point at which I close the window. So there are a whole set of closed windows you can't pull anything out of because they're locked. They're in the process of calculating a settlement matrix.
Yeah, but I think we're going to stop that, actually.
Stop doing that.
Yeah, stop doing that. And we will just have something that says, do the aggregation in the approved, not in the persistence layer way, as part of settlement matrix production.
I'm with you. Okay, well, enough on that subject. I'm glad I see now where this is going. It makes sense to me. It's clearly not an urgent enough thing that it will impact the work you're doing in this PI, which means you'll have something at the end of the phase, which is a complete settlement V2 that does all the things we needed to do, that Moali needs, that TIPS needs, and it's stable and tested. And we can look at refactoring and technical debt reduction post-phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Indeed.
Right. In that case, our work here is done, I think, chaps.
Wonderful.
So, what time are we supposed to be restarting? Does anyone know?
I'm pretty sure Megan's going to show up with a buggy whip at some point and get us to all go back to the main window.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when that was, since presumably we can, we are finished now. We can go and make ourselves a cup of tea or whatever it is people in heathen countries drink.
I'm actually on tea today in your honor. Although it's not black British tea, it's green jasmine tea.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have to say that when Americans say they're drinking tea, English people say, you might think you're drinking tea.
Yes, but I won't even ask you whether you put the cream in first or second, because I know you didn't use any, you heathen.
I certainly wouldn't use any cream. Tea?
I certainly don't.
Right, good man. Right, yes, so... but we don't know, actually, hold on, I could just look at my...
I think it's probably too early for a Guinness, right?
It's never too early for a Guinness.
Well, given that it's 7:15 in the morning for me, I'm going to make that call myself. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
It's 10:15 for me, but it is a Friday and it's coming close to noon. So.
That's true. In fact, there's nothing wrong with a breakfast beer now and then.
Absolutely. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so it says here that, in a quarter of an hour's time, we're supposed to do report outs and closing.
And you are an excellently on time work stream. There are other work streams that were not so much. Well, move along and go.
Yes. Your work here is not done.
Visits flowers.
Absolutely. Well, we hope we have provided you with sufficient nectar for your onward journey.
Oh, this has been very fulfilling. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to leave this meeting, and I'll see you all back in the main meeting in a quarter of an hour's time.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Super useful. Cheers. Bye.